Welcome to Motive and Malice, where we unravel the stories behind history's most audacious crimes. And tonight, we've got a good one. We're heading back to a time of gaslight and shadows to unpack a crime so daring, people called it the heist of the century.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 1913. We're in London. This is Edwardian London, a city of, glittering, unbelievable wealth, but also these deep, foggy shadows. It's really the twilight of England's golden age. So that's the big question, right? How on earth do you steal the world's most valuable necklace when it's in a sealed box that's inside the mail? Tonight, we're digging into the Great Pearl Heist. I mean, this crime was so clever, so ingenious, it left Scotland Yard completely stumped. And believe me, it became an absolute legend.
All right, so before we get into the how, we've got to talk about the what. Let's meet the star of the show, the object of everyone's desire. Okay, look at that number, £135,000. That was the insured value back in 1913. Now, that might not sound like a crazy number today, but let me put it in perspective for you. That's the equivalent of over £16 million in today's money. I mean, it's just an unbelievable, staggering amount for one single piece of jewelry.
And this wasn't just any old necklace. It was so famous, it had a nickname, the Mona Lisa of pearls. We're talking 61 flawless blush pink pearls. It was literally the most valuable portable object of wealth on the planet. And get this, to really drive it home, it was said to be worth twice the price of the Hope Diamond. Yeah, that Hope Diamond.
Of course, every great heist needs a great mastermind. And this one? It had the absolute best. Enter Joseph "Cammy" Grizzard. To the public, he was this elegant, legitimate diamond dealer in London's famous Hatton Garden. But in the underworld, he was known as the king of fences.
Now here's what you've got to understand about Grizzard. The man was already rich. This wasn't about the money, not at all. The New York Times actually hit the nail on the head. They wrote, the theft was committed just for the glory of the thing. For him, this was sport, it was art, and let's be honest, it was all about ego.
Okay, if you want a story that perfectly sums this guy up, look no further than the legend of the Soup Diamonds. So picture this. Grizzard's hosting a fancy dinner party. Suddenly, bam, the police raid his home. They tear the place apart looking for stolen goods. They find nothing. They leave totally defeated. The moment they're out the door, Grizzard, cool as a cucumber, just calmly reaches into his soup bowl and pulls out a string of stolen diamonds he'd hidden there. I mean, come on, the sheer audacity. He was unflappable and always one step ahead.
So you've got this incredible prize and this larger-than-life mastermind. The question is, how does a guy like that even begin to pull off the impossible?
Well, you don't do it alone. He put together a crew, a real syndicate of specialists. You had Grizzard himself as the mastermind, of course. Then there's James Lockett, a top-tier burglar and the tech guy. Simon Silverman was on logistics and surveillance. And then you had Lizer Goodworth, the intermediary. Now you're going to want to remember that name because he turns out to be the weak link.
And their plan? Wow. It was an absolute masterpiece of timing, bribery, and pure nerve. And the genius of it was that they targeted the one thing everyone in England trusted implicitly, the Royal Mail. So here's how it went down. First, they bribed the postman. Easy enough. That lets them divert the registered package to a secret office they'd rented. Then, the switch. They swap out the priceless pearls for, get this, 11 sugar cubes that match the weight exactly. They reseal the package with a perfectly forged wax seal, pop it back into the mailbag, and it gets delivered as if nothing ever happened. Simple, elegant, and absolutely brilliant.
So they did it. They pulled off the perfect crime. Or so they thought, because the heist might have been over, but the hunt was just getting started.
The insurers, Lloyds of London, were obviously desperate, so they put up a massive reward, £10,000. Now, the idea here was simple but smart. Turn the criminal underworld against itself. Put enough money on the table, and someone is bound to talk.
And guess what? It worked like a charm. Remember that name I told you to, remember? Lizer Goodworth? The weak link. The whole perfect crime started falling apart because of one simple, classic human flaw. He just could not resist bragging about it.
So, that little bit of bragging, it gets back to the police, and it kicks off one of the most intense surveillance operations Scotland Yard had ever mounted. They get plainclothes detectives on the gang, watching their every move. But here's the thing. Grizzard's crew wasn't stupid.
They were just as clever as the cops. So what happens next is this insane cat-and-mouse game on the streets of London. The detectives are watching the gang,
And the gang members start watching the detectives who are watching them. It was a total stalemate of observation, a real battle of wits between Chief Inspector Alfred Ward and our king of fences. Just everybody watching everybody.
Finally, on September 2nd, the police make their move. They set up this elaborate sting, and boom, the whole gang is caught. Case closed, right? Wrong. The gang was in custody, but the necklace, the whole reason for all this, was nowhere to be found.
So you can just imagine, right? The papers are going crazy, the gang's behind bars, but the prize is still out there somewhere. And this brings us to a really central question about the whole affair, which is a perfect time to dip into our listener mailbag. Okay, so we've got a great question here from Anna in Bristol. She asks, if Grizzard wasn't motivated by money, what was he motivated by? And Anna, that is the $1 million, or I guess 16 million pound question, isn't it? It gets right to the heart of who this guy was. For Grizzard, crime was pure performance art. It was his stage. It was all about proving, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he was smarter than everybody else, especially the police.
So, with everyone wondering where the necklace is, how does this whole mystery finally get solved? Was it some brilliant piece of detective work? Nope. It was pure, ridiculous, unbelievable chance. Get this. A piano maker named Augustus Horn finds a matchbox lying in a gutter. He opens it, sees the pearls, and just assumes they're fakes. He literally gives one to a neighborhood kid to use as a marble. A marble! Eventually, he takes the rest to the police, who are just stunned. You honestly could not make this stuff up.
All right, so with the pearls recovered, it's time for the final act, the trial at the Old Bailey.
And you know what? The jury didn't need much time at all. It took them just 11 minutes to come back with a guilty verdict for everyone. Grizzard and his top burglar, Lockett, each got 7 years of penal servitude. Silverman got 5 years, and Gutworth, our talkative weak link, he got 18 months of hard labor. And just like that, the king of fences was, finally, dethroned.
But it's funny how history works, isn't it? This was called the crime of the century, but it was pretty soon forgotten, completely overshadowed by the outbreak of World War I. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If a world war hadn't basically erased it from the headlines, would Joseph Grizzard, the king of fences, be as infamous today as Sherlock Holmes is famous? It's something to think about.